Thank you for coming and being a part of this orientation. This past fall, I thoroughly enjoyed having the opportunity to be in listening sessions with clergy and laity across the annual conference. I quickly realized that there were certain questions which were surfacing again and again. Some of them were around how we would be doing appointment making in North Alabama during my tenure here. The answer to that is really what this video is about. I thought that it would be great to have an opportunity to share with you the principles that are important to me behind appointment making and some of the process that we as a cabinet will be using. Let me begin by saying that I think that appointment making is as important as any function that we have as a cabinet. The district superintendents and bishop have many roles to play. None is more important than the one of making appropriate and effective matches between clergy and churches and other appointment assignments. When we come together, it's really a 24/7, 365-day-a-year process around appointments. The hardest and the most intense work happens in the spring, but we are continually assessing and thinking about the right appointments for this annual conference. I invite you to join the cabinet and me in praying that our appointment making will be spirit-led, discerning, and wise. Consultation is the first step in appointment making, and that happens throughout the year. Particularly in the fall here in North Alabama, every clergy person meets with their district superintendent to discuss the effectiveness of them in their particular ministry context. They also discuss the health and the effectiveness of the church where they are serving. This has already happened for each clergy person, and in situations where we are aware that there will be a pastoral change due to retirement or other issues or a possible move, then the staff parish, the pastoral parish relations committees have also had a consultation with the district superintendent. That consultation is about the church and the needs of the church and the effectiveness of the current match with that church. The consultations give the district superintendents insight into three factors that are key for us in appointment making. None of these three factors is more important than the others. Altogether, they help to frame and help us to make decisions about when it's time for possible changes. We take into consideration the church and the needs and the effectiveness of the church. What's best for the church? That's one of the considerations. A second consideration is what's best for this particular pastor at this stage in their ministry. And the third consideration is what are the needs of the annual conference? What will help us as an annual conference to keep moving forward in the best way possible? That brings me to the matter of itinerancy. Every ordained elder has committed to itinerate as needed in the annual conference and in the United Methodist Church in general. Each year, we are all available for appointment. The cabinet certainly takes into consideration personal needs, such as situations where spouses have jobs and where there are children and they're in schools where they need to continue. And sometimes there are other factors also, such as aging parents and other personal needs that make it difficult for a clergy person to itinerate all across the conference. What's important to understand is that when a clergy person places geographic restrictions on where they can serve, it limits the potential number of wonderful matches, ideal matches for that clergy person. Let me give you an example of what I mean. A number of years ago, I had been serving in a church setting for 11 years. I had been in a multiple staff situation, and the last 3 years of that setting I had served as the associate pastor. I discerned that it was time for me to move into a solo appointment. I went to my district superintendent and during the consultation shared that information with him. Then I proceeded to tell him that because of my husband's ministry location and because of the ages of our children, that there would be some geographic restrictions on where we felt we could move. My district superintendent had wonderful insight for me. He told me that he and the cabinet would certainly be sensitive to our family situation and would not place us in a setting that was more difficult geographically than we could handle as a family. But he also reminded me that if I placed restrictions on where I could serve, then it would be inappropriate for me to complain if I was disappointed in the appointment. Later, when I was a district superintendent, I realized that the geographic restrictions I had given him initially would have only made it possible for me to serve in 4 potential churches, none of which were churches that were appropriate for where I was at that stage in my ministry. My husband and I processed the matter after talking with the DS, and I came back to him a few days later and told him that we wanted to remove the geographic restrictions. Instead, we would trust the cabinet to place me in an appointment that was most appropriate for me. It turned out to be one of the best appointments of my life, and my husband and I grew through that experience in our trust of the itinerant system. I have a policy of never saying never. However, it will be rare for us to have mid-year appointments. Once the appointments are made, then we will work very hard to make them stick. On occasion, though, there will be a pastor who becomes ill or who has another situation develop in their life that prevents them from continuing. In those instances, we will generally make an interim appointment. I'm very excited that the Board of Ministry and the Cabinet are partnering together to train more interim pastors for our annual conference. So that's the direction we will generally go when there's a need for a mid-year change. And now I have a word about the kitchen cabinet. Every conference has some clergy who spend a good bit of time talking about appointments. It's understandable why that is the case. Appointments affect the clergy and their families so very much. A kitchen cabinet will sometimes just have those kinds of conversations in private with friends. Other times it becomes a broad conversation. Here's my concern about kitchen cabinet conversations. Sometimes the projections that a kitchen cabinet makes as they guess who's going to be going where turns out to be the same projections that the appointive cabinet makes. This can be hurtful to clergy and also to churches. If word circulates in advance of the district superintendents talking about it, that their pastor is moving or that their church is receiving a certain pastor, it can break trust between the district superintendents and the local churches. If the churches and or the pastors think that the district superintendents are breaking confidentiality, when really what's happening is that people are guessing, and they're guessing correctly. So here's what I would say about kitchen cabinet conversation to clergy. I would request that you refrain from it as much as possible. And I would also say that on occasions where kitchen cabinet conversation interferes with the appointment process, we will find the source of the rumor and have direct conversations with them. I would also say this to pastor parish committees. Only believe the information that you hear directly from your district superintendents. The district superintendents have covenanted together that we would not discuss appointments with anyone besides the 9 of us, the 8 district superintendents and me. So if you hear from another source that an appointment has been made, then know that it is not final. You will be the first to know, along with your pastor, of any appointment changes in your church. The Cabinet has developed a timeline for the appointment process this spring. Your district superintendent has for you a handout which enumerates the various important dates related to appointment making. I invite you again to be in prayer when you know that we are meeting, and those dates are quite clear on the handout. Also, there are 2 dates that I will particularly lift up to you. First, the appointments will be announced publicly on April the 14th. The staff parish committees and also the pastors will be informed about the appointments shortly prior to that date. Also, note that on April the 23rd, we will have a moving pastors' day apart. I ask that every pastor who is moving come and participate in that day as you are oriented for the moving process. Again, thank you for being here for this time with pastors and with Pastor Staff Parish Relations Committee. I appreciate so much the work that you do day in and day out, week after week after week for God and for God's church. My prayer is that God will continue to work through you and me to make North Alabama Methodism all that we can be.